Hi, welcome to Educate Focus. My name is Kellyanne Rodriguez. Today I will introduce you to the CSEC Principles of Accounts Syllabus. Now, what I'm going to look at are the highlights of the syllabus, where CSEC stated that it is imperative that you have practical experience. Now, what CSEC did is that they put asterisks throughout the syllabus to highlight specific objectives where it is imperative that you have the practical experience. So activities. So if you are about to sit exam in June 2025, or you are students in Form 4 and you're about to enter into the Principles of Accounts syllabus, you need to pay attention to the asterisks, because this is telling you that this is where CSEC wants you to be able to interpret and analyze the information, where you have to use your application skills. These are areas where marks are very imperative. However, you will find there are other areas that don't have the asterisks, and this is where your knowledge or comprehension is being applied. So where the asterisks are is where we're going to look at. Now there are 11 sections of the syllabus, but section 1 and section 2, there are very few asterisks, which means to say that your knowledge and comprehension skills are very important in these areas. You must learn the terms and how the principles apply. You must be able to write words and meaning in these areas. However, where the asterisks are, you must get the practical experience or practical activities in it. So what I'm going to advise you is to look for as much questions in these areas that we're going to look at from past paper questions and practice. Practice from now. If you're sitting exams in June, this is a way that you can do your own crash course to qualify. However, if you're a Form 4 students who now enter in it, be aware of these areas so that when your teacher touch base on these topics, you can now know how important it is that you yourself have to start applying yourself and learning how to interpret and analyze these areas. So you can do as much practical questions as possible so that when the exam comes, you will be fully prepared. So in section 1, accounting as profession, there are no asterisks. So your knowledge is very important of the terms and concepts and whatever they use. Section 2, accounting as a system, there are asterisks on objective 9, construct a balance sheet. So what the examiner is saying that in the exam, in paper 2, note that you will have practical questions that may come that will requires you to be able to construct a balance sheet. Let's look again. In section 3, books of original entry, there are several asterisks, and in these areas it is very imperative that you have practice in these areas, because if you look at past paper questions, you will realize that a lot of questions comes in these areas. And let's look at it. Section 3, books of original entry. Prepare source documents. Translate the source document into transaction. Use source documents to make entries into books of original entry. What are your books? Learn them. Balance your cash book and indicate treatment of totals from books of original entry. So you need to have the practical experience in this. If you don't have the practical and you go into the exam room and attempt one of these questions, know that you're going to have much difficulties in passing the question. Section 4, ledgers and trial balance. You need to have the background knowledge of the other areas, but to draw up a simple account format neatly and accurately, practical activity. Post from books of original entry to the general ledgers and subsidiary ledgers, to balance and close of accounts, and use the balance board down to construct the trial balance. Now remember, these are CSEC highlights. If you download the PDF version of the CSEC syllabus for Principles of Accounts, you will find one asterisk there. I put 3 so that you will note that these are very important. Section 5, the preparation and the analysis of financial statements of a sole trader. You must be able to draw up an income statement for a sole trader to determine whether there are gross profit or loss and whether there is a net profit and loss. So you must know the construction of an income statement, to prepare classify balance sheet in a vertical style, to use the ratios to determine performance profitability of the business, to calculate ratios to demonstrate the financial position of a business, to show the effect of the net profit or loss on capital. So get as much practical questions in these areas and the other areas that we are about to look at. Section 6, Accounting Adjustments. A lot of students who already go through these sections, they will know how challenging it is. But if you practice, the more you practice these questions, the more you become aware of the different angles and the different techniques that are being used so that you'll be able to interpret and analyze what is being required of you. So that is the reason why it is imperative that you practice these areas. So you need to prepare journal entries and ledger accounts to write off bad debts and create provision for doubtful debts. You need to be able to calculate annual depreciation expenses using straight line and the reducing balance method, to prepare journal entries and ledger accounts for provision for depreciation, prepare income statement to reflect adjusting entries, and prepare financial statement after adjustments. This is sometimes they ask you to show a balance sheet extract, right? So look for the questions in these areas and practice a few. If you're sitting exams in June, note how imperative it is that you have the practical activity in these areas. Section 7, Control Systems. Prepare journal entries for the correction of errors. Construct a suspense account. Construct a statement of revised profit after the correction of errors. Construct sales and purchase ledger control accounts. Construct a balance reconciliation statement using the adjusted cash book. Section 8, Accounting for Partnership. You must be able to prepare journal entries and ledger accounts to record the capital of a partnership. Use various methods to show profit and loss amongst partners. There are several methods. Prepare appropriation account of partnerships. Prepare current accounts for the partners. And to prepare a balance sheet for partnership. Practice, practice, practice. Section 9, Accounting for Limited Liability Companies, Cooperatives, and Non-Profit Organization. In this section, a lot of questions come. But if you look at Section 9, you will see there are several areas here that they can touch on. Limited liability, cooperatives, and non-profit organization. So you must be able to prepare journal entries to record the issues of shares and debentures, calculate dividends payments for various types of shares, appropriate profit between dividends and reserve, to prepare the final accounts of a limited liability company and the cooperatives, analyze performance and position using ratios, and prepare the receipts and payment account for the non-profit organization. So there are several areas where full 20-mark questions can come on. So practice these. Practice doing questions in these areas so that when you reach in the exam room, you're comfortable. Manufacturing inventory controls. Now, how they split this question, this section, it's interesting to know that, sometimes most of the times you'll see a manufacturing account come, but inventory control can come within another question, so that it's not a full mark question. But if you look at this, you will see how imperative it is that you do the questions and be familiar with the examiner's approach in manufacturing within this section, so that when you reach in the exam, once again, you want to be able to sit down and not look at the paper and the paper looking at you. So you prepare manufacturing accounts to calculate unit cost of the items produced. And I see several times a few marks is given away just for you to calculate the unit cost of the item produced, right? Prepare final accounts for the manufacturing concern. Apply basic costing principles. And calculate the value of closing inventory using FIFO, LIFO, and AFCO. So first in, first out, last in, first out, and the average costing. And the final section is accounting for the entrepreneur. In this section, you need to be able to prepare a spreadsheet to arrive at net pay amounts after deductions, calculate employee earnings, and prepare cash flow projections within a 6-month period. This, however, I tell my students, when you're doing a questions within accounting for entrepreneurship, which is like payrolls or the spreadsheets or the cash flow projections, note that you are not doing double entry. You are just doing a spreadsheet. It's basic maths and calculations. So just read the question properly, and it's just for you to interpret it. So So once again, thank you for joining me. I hope that you all are more aware of the syllabus and what is required of you. And if you're sitting exams in June, all the best. Do some questions within these highlighted areas. But if you're Form 4 students and you're about to enter into the syllabus, please be aware of these so that you will start preparing yourself in each area as you go along, so that by the time you're ready to sit the exam, you're equipped to handle the full past paper question. So all the best, and thank you for joining me once again. My name is Kellen Rodriguez. I represent Educate Focus, the Workforce Limited. Thank you and goodbye.